I know I ended the last video rather quickly. This is because we're getting into a whole new concept where we're creating properties on these div elements or on all of these elements, which is a pretty hard cutoff of the last thing. So, um, these properties are they allow us to interact with the code HTML through through JavaScript and CSS, allow us to format it, allow us to interact with it, like add in new elements and stuff like that. Um, we'll be dealing with like how to do that in JavaScript tutorials. I'm pretty sure. Um, I'm like 90% sure that that includes this, but essentially, you can add in different variables and different things on, well, I wouldn't say variables, but I'll say properties and what they call attributes onto these elements. Every single element can have a different attribute um, that allows us to store like an ID, classes, different data, like all sorts of things. And a lot of it's there's like really specific things that are specific to whatever you're working on. Like input elements will require a value. Um, Different things like tables could use like call width or whatever it's called, call span, that kind of thing. So there's specific things for there's specific attributes for specific elements. But I think we're going to go through ID and maybe some classes that are for those apply to everything. So we're going to add an ID with the attribute of introduction onto this. And HTML allows us to utilize these attributes pretty well. So add an ID with the attribute introduction with the brown bear. Okay, ID equals introduction. So notice how I put that on. I put a space after the H1, and I put ID equals, and then I do double quotes introduction. Okay, there's no space. You cannot start with a number. That's not allowed. And some people put these spaces. I personally hate that. I really, really dislike that. And also, some HTML will actually render if you do that. But it's generally good practice to include those quotes. So let's run that. It won't change anything. Did you assign ID of introduction? Yes, I did. To the div element that is below. Oh, hush. There. Run. Add an ID habitat. This one. ID equals habitat. Run. And then that one's going to be media. ID equals media. So I think the next reason why we do this is for us to do links. We'll get into that later. Yeah. So now let's add some paragraphs, add some content. Okay. So it's basically just a block of plain text. Span allows us to basically divide inline text into smaller blocks of code, so we could like style a word red or something like that. So yeah, so let's take a look at each of these elements below. Okay, so it wants us to below the H2 tag about brown bears, add a paragraph element with the following text. Copy, paste. Great. Add 2 space of indentation when you do the nest elements. Okay, yeah, it says always add that. Doesn't technically need it, but yeah, it's good practice to do that. All right, H3, add, so this is features, P, and make sure you do lowercase. So it wants to do this, boink, boink, run. Great. And then H3 element that says that, add a paragraph, H3 countries, P. Great, run. Cool, next. Styling text. Okay, yeah, you've got strong. I never use this EM thing. I just put it in an I, which does the same thing. And generally I do, instead of using HTML to do this, I use CSS, but this does the same thing. So, it wants to put, in the first thing we put brown bear, emphasize Ursus Arcturus. wants us to emphasize that using the em tag. em run. So notice how that put that in italics. And then strong tag about brown bears. Least concern. Run. All right. Great. Line breaks. Cool. Let's do some line breaks. Basically, just allows us to break up our paragraphs. Because if we just put an enter here and run it, it's not going to work. You actually have to add a break. So least concern, which was actually right there. So you have to add one of these tags right here. And generally, it's good practice. Oh, add 2 line breaks. Whoopsies. 1, 2, run. Okay. And generally, it's good practice to do put each of these on their own line, and then start your paragraph right there. So it doesn't change anything, but that's just generally good practice. All right, next. Unordered lists. I will watch the next video, and that'll be start of lists.